The impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Denton. It is vampires, and there's a host of damned souls at Pelham House.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. You can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everybody, this is Irene Allen from the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And I'm here today with Mark Johnson, which is going to be a bit, Mark, it's going to be a bit difficult, isn't it? Because we got two Marks now, so what am I going to call you, Mark or Farkle?
Well,
Mark
you've called me, yeah, Mark 1 and Mark 2. There we go. She's called me a lot worse names.
You sound like a couple of cars, Mark 1 and Mark 2.
Just so that people aren't confused right away, we'll go right into introducing our guest tonight is Mark Manning. Now, Mark, who's a resident of Ireland, has joined the Paranormal UK Radio Network with a brand new show, Scary, and I hate to dance, I'm American, sorry, Scary Eire?
Just break it into two. So Eire, and then say it fast. Eire.
Scary Eire.
Scary Eire.
No, not Eire. Not Eire.
Okay.
I think we should explain as well that Eire is the Celtic word or Gaelic word for Ireland. So.
Yes. For klutzy Americans like myself.
Mark, I still have to explain it all later,
Yes, I know. Oh, well. Anyway, but Mark is joining us with his brand new show, which the premiere episode is already out. It's going to be releasing a show bi-weekly. So, Mark, we're just glad to have you here on the network.
And delighted to be here, and thank you so much.
Now, yes?
Mark 1, stop it. Mark 2, I can't do this. I can't do too much.
Irene,
Mark or Farkle, all right?
No,
all right.
Irene, I'd suggest that you can call me Charlie for tonight. That's what they did in Duran Duran, They had a problem. They had Simon Le Bon and someone in the crew called Simon, and eventually Simon Le Bon is now known as Charlie. So I'll be Charlie in this conversation, please.
Okay, Charlie. All right.
That's
Charlie.
it. Much better.
That's better. Yeah, I like that, Charlie. Charles or Charlie? Charles.
The honorary Charlie.
Okay, Charlie. Charlie for tonight.
I like it.
Yes, I forgot what I was going to ask you. The show is, what's the show? It's all about the folklore of Ireland?
Well, Irene, it's a mixed bag, but essentially I wouldn't be doing a paranormal show at all, right? I would be like everybody else with my eyes shut, unless I hadn't seen what I saw in the late 70s. So I'm a convert with an open mind. So it'll cover a variety of things. Anything, of course, that people want to contribute. That's what I really need. And they can get us at paranormalireland@protonmail.com for any Irish-related stories back in your ancestry or whatever. So yes, it would cover everything from, I suppose, the little people to ghosts, sailors, soldiers, persecution, all the stuff that makes up the rich tapestry of Ireland.
Okay, all right then. So that's good, Charlie.
Thank you.
I like this, Charlie.
Ireland is certainly on my bucket list to visit.
Well, look, next time you come to me, we'll hop over there, okay?
That would be lovely. Hopefully after, the crappy weather is over, which is what, a year from now?
Yeah. No, we go across a little bit of water. I'll let you swim from halfway when I throw you overboard. But yeah, so this I want to know what happened in the 70s. What happened in the 70s?
What happened in the 70s, Irene, is still as vivid to me now as it was back then. So getting to the point, I was an army brat. My father was an officer for 40 years in the Irish Defence Forces. We moved around. We were in Israel and Syria and you name it, pretty much all around the Middle East in the 60s. And indeed, he was back in the 80s. In command of a camp that's now kind of in the news, but he's passed 10 years back, and my mother a little bit before him. We had this old British Army house in what was formerly known as Portobello Barracks. It had been occupied by the English or the British troops for 112 years. And it was, when I think back, it was a pretty amazing place to grow up in, because what we actually had back then, you know, and even now, the house I have isn't as big as it. It was a big house, but it was part of a terrace or a block, pardon the pun, which ran the whole length nearly the whole length of one side of the barracks. And adjacent to it was a depot, and I looked into the plans of it as well. Originally, there was an officers' mess there. Getting to the point, there was a place called the master bedroom, and for those of you listening in the UK, you would have all known the late Terry Wogan, right? And the master bedroom looked right out over a field, and across the field there was a church, and that's where Terry Wogan got married. And it always seemed to be dark in there. If it was getting the sun at all, it would only be in the morning. And I think I was only a kid, you know, I was 7 or 8, and I think I was sharing it with a sister. Little sister's 2 years younger than me. And I woke up around early-ish. I'd say, you know, it was a long time ago, but I know it was dawn. It was 4 o'clock type thing. And I can still see what I believe was probably either stone tape theory in action or a replaying of something. It was a lady, you could say apparition, you could say spectre, but it was quite vivid. And I knew even at that age, she was from another time. There was the long blue, I know it's a bit cliched, but she had the long blue cloak. She was very serene. There was nothing in the least menacing or threatening about her. And pale-faced and long dark hair, which actually my mother had long black hair, but it wasn't her. This lady was, as I said, from another era. And, you know, guys, I was offered that room when I was 24 years of age, and I wouldn't take it, right? So that's the effect it had on me. But she was looking at me, essentially, just serenely looking at me from the doorway of the master bedroom. And eye contact did not last too long, I can tell you, but what I saw was enough to convince me of what I saw. The hair does stand up on your head. It actually does. I can verify it did. I could feel it, and I wasn't hanging around. I gingerly got under the covers and cacking myself, as they say, and resurfaced equally as gingerly some hours later, probably. Came downstairs, and I remember saying, listen, I saw a woman in that room last night. And of course it was a school day, and I was told to eat your Rice Krispies, snap, crackle and pop, out the door with you to school. Now, there were a few other things reported about that house from sisters of mine. You know, I have a funny, we've an airline pilot in the house. We've a psychologist and an author. So we were, as I said, you know, we were just a big army family, Brady bunch, 3 boys, 3 girls.
Yeah.
And one of them would say, oh, I feel evil in that room. But you know, the worst thing about it, Irene and Mark, is I could never really take anybody else's experiences seriously apart from mine. Because, and that was probably wrong of me, because people did say and including a friend of mine who had, you know, no dog in the fight. He came in one day and he was in the toilet and he said, who's doing the singing? And my mother had said that she'd heard music, harpsichord type music as well in the place. But that's what I saw, Irene. I could go on about it, but that was enough to convince me.
That was something, yeah. So what time do you think she was from?
Well, Funny you asked, because I have my suspicion, and it could be totally erroneous. Let me answer your question. Probably the 1870s.
Yeah.
And I have a reason for saying that, because I have a half-baked theory. I did a bit of research, and it's online. If you go Portobello Barracks or Cahill Brua Barracks, as it is now. There was a poisoning in. Now, there was a lot of things. If you listen to the pilot show that went out, you'll hear an interview in situ there with the current curator. But there was a poisoning, a notorious. There was a murder case. A poisoning happened on December 27th, 1873, and Anne Winford Marshall. Now, that's a triple-barreled English name for sure. Probably, I'm suspecting, maybe an officer's wife or something. But a gunner, Donaldson, was found sprawled, poisoned to death across a bed in an apartment. I'm not sure if they shared it or not. I think it could have been an affair or something. I really don't know. But there was evidence given that she had purchased strychnine in Rathmines, which is a town this barracks is situated in, within the week or so beforehand. This is what the guy had died of. So the evidence was loaded against her. But funny enough, back then, the trial took place and she was found not guilty despite that evidence it happened in December, by February of the following year, 1874. So what I would love to find out, and I couldn't, because even though the archives are still there, they only date from when the Irish marched into the barracks and the British handed it over to them in 1922. The original records went back with the British. They could be in Kew Gardens in London. And if I could tie the apartment to our house at the time, which was F House. It could have been worse, like P House was across the way. But if I could tie it to that, that would explain to me, maybe I had a replay of somebody in either in grief or in despair or in trauma. That's the be all and end all of that story. But it was that's why I think it was the 1870s.
You saw her, so you saw her. Did she look upset? She wasn't there laughing her head off.
No.
Did she look like she was in trauma?
No, I wasn't even exactly doing the tap dance myself. She was. She looked, the word I used earlier, serene. Oh, you know what? In retrospect, she might have even been looking through me. You know, she was. I felt she was looking at me, but she didn't be looking through me. And as I said, if it's just some kind of a replay, you know, an explanation of energy or a burst of trauma or something. But listen, it could all be cacamamie, but the bottom line was I saw what I saw. And even though, you know, people have tried to rationalize it as I've gotten older, and even my own mind wants to try and rationalize it, it was too vivid. And I wouldn't be true to little 8-year-old Mark Manning if I said, I was imagining stuff, because I bloody wasn't. And that was underpinned in 2019 when I revisited the place. And stuff was told to me by the army guys that were there.
Oh, now Marco Farco, isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Definitely.
That's it. Charlie is a mine of useless information.
You know what I was thinking, Marco Farco? When Mark one, this is silly. You know what I was thinking when Charlie was saying that she looks serene. You know, the first thing that crossed my mind is that woman I saw in my son's place that time.
Yes.
Up in the attic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The way she looked at me. And the way I
heard this story, Irene. Sorry to interject. I heard that story. This is where she got as much as a shock as you got.
Yeah, she recognised. Yeah. She could see me.
Mm.
It was like she was time traveling or something like that. That's it. I don't know how. All I know is that she saw me and I saw her. And the expression, I think you could see it in the expression on her face, the shock.
Imagine the conversation around her breakfast table the next day.
Yeah, I've just seen a ghost.
From the future.
I saw a ghostie. Dressed weird.
She probably wouldn't understand what she was looking at. Maybe she was too shocked.
Do when they look at me, darling.
Maybe it was one of those situations where she's just too in shock to pay attention to what you're wearing.
Yeah, but I often do think, like you just said, if she was from the future, or she did go back to her family or back into her own life, did she turn around and say to them that she's seen a ghost?
Most likely she did,
It's weird, isn't it? When you think about it, are we all crossing dimensions, zigzagging about, and are we ghosts in other people's eyes from other dimensions, or are we just seeing ghosts, dead people?
Well, speaking of dimensions, and this is your show, so I'm just giving my own. When I was a bit older then, let's say I was heading towards finishing school, we were all we all spoke Irish in a particular college, right? Because I failed. Literally looking out on that field I was mentioning earlier, there was a college, but my schooling was all over the place when I was young, so I failed the entrance exam. I ended up going into town every day. And as a result, so I was in this kind of all-boys Irish-speaking college right up at the top of O'Connell Street, where all the infamous riots took place last year. And we were chasing the girlies, you see. So I will get to the point here. Who were in
most young boys do,
as young boys do, and God forgive the gods of fashion. But believe it or not, do not ask me why. I borrowed a pair of my sisters. Those kind of thigh-length boots. Well, they weren't quite thigh up to the calf, and no. I convinced myself I was looking hard as some kind of a biker, right? Big E, just as we say here. And we were going up to meet the girls from Skull Katrina. To try and, as we'd say in Ireland, get off with them, right? Yeah. And I got hit by a car. I got hit by a car, Mark and Irene, and I went like a ballerina pirouetting around, like the opening scene of The Sound of Music. I went spinning around, right? And one of the boots, by the way, got ripped all the way open. So the guy was breaking himself.
Your sister was pleased.
She wasn't. I think she'd long abandoned them at that stage. She'd grown up. Oh. But talk about another. I get to the point, Mark. Right, I was knocked into another dimension. It felt like it was an electric pulse in my head. I got a glancing blow, I suppose it would be described as, and you literally hear. And I don't know how I did get home. I didn't end up in a hospital. I came home. I said to my mother, and you know what, Irene, this will date it for you. You might remember The Look of Love by ABC.
Oh, yeah.
That's the look. I remember that was on television at the time. So that would have been 1981-ish, 82-ish, with my DJ hat on me. And I said to my mother, I was hit by a car. And she looked at me. And of course, it's Ireland. And, you look all right to me. Have your dinner. But I do think that knocked me to my core. It was like an electric pulse. So God knows where we end up when we do cross, but I felt I was somewhere. I was knocked out of it, That was a break for ads, by the way.
Well, that's actually a very interesting story because it goes along lines with a lot of topics we've talked about with, interdimensional, different vibrations, a lot of realities all happening at once. We're just tuned into one. And, going through a traumatic experience like that could shock your body or your brain or whatever changing frequencies momentarily to experience something quite different.
Oh, I was knocked into another dimension. That's what it felt like. And the driver was panicking. Because he knew, I think maybe he was going too fast or something. And he said, "Will I get him to a hospital? Will I get him to a hospital?" And of course, one of my best friends, by the way, who you might hear on the show, he's over in the States at the moment. Steve and I are friends for 50 years. As your best friends always do, what was Steve doing when all this was happening? Breaking his heart laughing. And I said,
that's what I was just going to say. If it was Mark, I'd be killing myself laughing.
Yeah, he said, I said to him, "Some mate you are," as I was recovering my composure. And he said, "Oh, sorry, it's shock.
Well,
Guys,
no, honestly, Mark, I wouldn't laugh. I would not laugh at you pirouetting around.
Oh, yes, you would. If I went flipping ass over tea kettle, you'd be on the ground rolling.
I'll lend you my biker's boots sometime, Mark, and you can do a replay.
Yeah.
A sequel.
I'll get Ryan to knock you over when you come back here.
Oh, there we go.
That would be funny.
So Mark, tell us a little bit about your career. I mean, you have had quite a career doing a number of different things, including being a voiceover artist. And I mean, what else have you been doing with your life?
I still am a voiceover artist, and can I announce to you, you will be in good company, because I can't name him, right? But he'll do a little voiceover. The guy who does NBC and CNBC, and he's very, very official. I got him to record something for Scary Eire. It's just a little by. In answer to your question, and that guy, by the way, he can command a serious amount of money for his voiceovers. So started out an army brat, you know that bit. Army family. My grandfather indeed was in the British Army, and I thought he was just enlisted in the First World War. And this is about me, not him. I'm just setting the scene for you. And he came over after the war and discovered it wasn't such a long way to Tipperary. He literally went to Tipperary, as the song goes. And he was into radio back in the war. Isn't that weird? Kind of. Now, then it would have been Morse and all that, but I saw his army records. So I thought, like my brother as well, who used to fly the government jet here, he was in our little, what we won't call it an Air Force, it's Air Corps. He used to fly the government jet around, and I thought I'd make it as a cadet, and I was doing my little bit in what would be your reserves, probably, Mark, and the territorials to you, Irene, and I was doing well in it. But I'm afraid I didn't get what was called a Great Leaving Cert. I was just short the one honour, as it was known, to get into the cadets, and maybe it's just as well I didn't, because I think I might have been a bit of a mummy's boy. But I had won best soldier and stuff like that, and I was a bit army-barmy. But the plan with me was always, the first love was always broadcasting, and that never really happened. And I thought, I'll do the army for 5-6 years or whatever. I'll get out as a captain or something, and I'll really go for radio. But when the cadetship fell through, now I could have probably gone back, but I hated school. I cannot tell you how much I detested school, like a lot of my generation. I mean, we were physically, now there were people sexually abused, but we were certainly physically and mentally abused, and both those in my case, when I was in primary school. So I was not going back to school, I can tell you. So I fell into a company. At that stage, it was called Rank Xerox. You might know them, of course, as Xerox. And that was interesting. I was just like a little copy bureau guy, which, in other words, you came in and said, here's the original. Can I have 50 copies of that or 1,000 copies of that? And I was the guy who served you. And if you've ever seen the film Working 9 to 5, where the photocopier kind of explodes on Jane Fonda, I think that's called a 9400 photocopier. And I even remember the stats. I think it was two prints a second, 7,200 an hour, 5 reams of paper. I remember all. Anyway, so I was doing all this stuff. But I used to see these guys in nice suits who had company cars, talked about things called commission, there was always competitions for foreign holidays. There was a lot of glam around it, funny enough. They were never short of women. And I used to go, sorry guys, I know we don't swear on this show, but I'd kind of go, F that, I know more about these frickin' copiers than these prats do, you know? So every time someone came into the shop, I was so helpful to them. But even then, I was a conniving little sod, you know, because the customer would say, I've never had such good service in my life. Thank you so much. And I'd say, if you liked it so much, would you mind just writing a note to such and such? Right? So I started, what did they call it? Like it used to be during the war or something, wasn't it? Like the fifth column, you know, I started my own little campaign, and I could have taught Kamala and Trump a thing or two. So I started my own kind of, clandestine operation in the background. So all these letters started coming in saying how good Mark Manning was to the management, accidentally on purpose. But then I used to hassle a guy who was a manager. Anyway, let me just cut to the chase. I became a salesman, and I became a bloody good one at a very young age, made it to major accounts in Xerox. Back in the 80s, when everybody else was leaving the country, I was flying to 5-star hotels. I had a company car under my arse. I had lovely suits and a few bob. I wasn't really focused on money at that stage. That came later. So it was a good place to be when you were 22, with a top multinational who are hugely and still are ethical company. I learned so much from them. And it was fun because when you're doing well in sales, if you're doing well, as I remember a boss saying to me, he said 2 things. Number 1, welcome to the club. You're naked. Right. Or what he meant by that, Irene, was that you are going to be seen by us, whether on your performance, you either are making the business, you are getting the numbers, or you're not, and you're on your own, kid. Best of luck, you know. So I was told I was naked. I was also told, congratulations, you have your own business, to which degree I did have as well, because it was sink or swim by yourself. I had a year of disaster, by the way. The first year, terrible. I used to drive to the Phoenix Park, biggest open air park in Europe. I used to sit there waiting to be fired. And I even remember there was a couple that used to drive up. They were obviously having an affair, because they didn't realize I was the watcher in the woods. And I'd be sitting in my car, as I said, waiting to get the call to be fired. This was before mobile phones. I was driving back to the office with my tail between my legs because I hadn't sold anything, you know. But I used to see these two walk gloriously hand in hand into the glade, getting up to all kinds of unmentionable things. But I was about to have my old job back because I'd made a balls basically of the sales thing. This was year 1, right? And you know the way you get a mentor? And the top guy in the company, God rest him, Joe Nolan, said to me, kid, you can run for the rest of your life, or you can come with me and watch how it's done. And he took me from the bottom of the Death Valley to the top of the Empire State Building in terms of my confidence, my sales, and I just took off. I was a whiz kid back then. And so sales went on quite a few years, got into laptop computers just at the right time with Toshiba, who were like the BMW of laptops back then. And I opened accounts like Intel are huge here, as are Microsoft. Indeed, I supplied Bill Gates with his laptop when he came over to launch Windows 95. Ooh. So anyway, I had a big career in sales, but always on the peripheral there was radio. Always. I was with the pirate stations, as they were called, Sunshine 101, Radio Dublin, all these that focus in Ireland.
They were good, weren't they?
Yeah, they were great. I'm glad you said that, Irene, because they don't make them like they used to. Now, look, there was a lot of wild stuff went on there as well, with like someone reading the news, and as he was reading it, someone would have a Zippo lighter on the script underneath, or poured cold water down his neck. Stuff you wouldn't get away with on a professional station. I was in a place, by the way, a notorious place called Radio Dublin, the guy, he's dead now, so he was the worst kind of individual you can, without getting into detail, you can imagine. If you know who the worst ones are, beginning with a P, that's what he was. That's what he was. And there was stuff going on there upstairs. I didn't know about it. I was only 20, 21 at the time, but I would be doing a late night show. And that's when you really get the pulse it's not so much that people are around all the time. It's the ones that are up at that hour of night, and you'd hear all kinds of. God, I listened to an old tape recently. I died of embarrassment because my little voice was like that, and I actually thought I was somebody on radio, and I was like sounding very posh. But
if you sounded like that, then how come you got this voice now?
Yes,
Huh?
Something dropped. Charlie's things dropped, I suppose, over time.
Yeah, I was going to say something must have dropped.
Yeah, so and let's just leave it at that. But look at guys, so it's to cut a long story short, it's been DJ, it's been soldier, it's been salesperson, it's been author. I've written as well. I always say, I'm taking the publishing world by cam, but it's up there anyway. I was a TV presenter as well for a while in around 2009ish, and then I fell in. Guys, I'm 61 and I fell into voiceover when I was 50. And I haven't looked back.
Well, you certainly have the voice for it. Definitely.
Yes, definitely got a voice. It's got one of these voices that make it go, ooh.
We might have to speak to him about doing a few promos.
You might have to do I can do a few voices as well, but if you did, well, you probably didn't, but David McGlynn was on The Squire on the initial show, and we like to do a bit of Liam Neeson every so often, Irene. Do you know what I mean? What are you doing tonight, love? Yeah, we like to do the voices, but that's what it is. And then, of course, I found myself listening to Paranormal Radio UK at all the wee small hours of the morning.
How did you find us?
I found you.
How did you find us?
I tell you now.
I say that we go everywhere anyway, don't we?
I'll tell you how I found you. There's a little app on my phone. It looks like an alien with a headset on it. That's the icon.
Yes. Shoot. They're a branch off of. I have it too. It's Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live.
And listen to this, guys.
What's that?
We hear silence.
That's your. Oh, did you hear silence?
Yeah. These microphones.
We got.
Oh,
there you go.
Yep. There we are in the background.
And I used to listen to you guys, and not just saying that. And I used to listen to David Young. Was it the Paranormal Peep Show? And it would be dun, 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 dun. I used to love that music.
Yeah.
And it was great for what is it? Insomnia. And you'd switch it on and put little ear pods in because I don't sleep that great.
As long as we're not causing insomnia.
Sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that could be taken one of two ways.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was very enjoyable in a restful way.
Mm-hmm.
So now.
Well, I find myself sometimes I'll throw on old Art Bell podcasts.
Yes, I've heard that. Yeah, he's gone
25.
Yeah,
he passed. We were actually on his station when he went digital, the Dark Matter digital network, before we formed the PAUK network.
But that was a huge audience, wasn't it? It's syndicated, isn't it?
Well, his old show, he was on Coast to Coast.
Yes, yeah.
And that was syndicated all over. That was back in the 90s.
All right.
And he was really, really big. And then in the early 2000s, he kind of retired, came back a little bit part-time. There was some drama there with the company that owned it, and he had some disputes with them. But then when his non-compete was up, he went over to Sirius XM, and he only lasted about 6 weeks. And he got into a dispute with them and quit. So then he had another non-compete for 2 years. So in the meantime, his webmaster put together the station in his name with the intention of it being Art was going to come back with his own new show, which was Midnight in the Desert, and be just like the old Art Bell show, except it was purely online. And we were the lead-in show, which I'm proud to say.
Yeah, we were.
Yep.
Yeah, that's he was out in Las Vegas way, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, he lived in a small town south of Las Vegas, about an hour, called Pahrump. and he had lived out there for years. He went to the Philippines for a couple of years, and then he came back. Art was he was a master. If there's somebody, I mean, he started paranormal radio, but to be fair, he talked about all sorts of different subjects, not just paranormal. Anything that he would talk about, anything pretty much. And he had a lot of great guests on for that time period. And it's strange sometimes to go back and listen to the old shows, especially when somebody comes on, they're trying to do predictions on what's going to happen for the future. It's like, well, let's see, they got that wrong, they got that wrong, they got that wrong.
And they do get so much wrong.
He didn't pull punches, did he?
No.
Irene, I've got a question to ask you. Do you do the like you can see things from afar, the vision thing the CIA used to do and all that?
Remote viewing.
Yes, do you do that?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Why do you want me to do it? Do you want me to find out about that lady in the house?
I'll tell you why, because the only, and I'll keep it short because I do go on. I know myself. Listen, folks, I apologize. But the only other kind of paranormal experience I had was back I was in Utah as well there in the States with I used to visit Utah to my friends in Utah it was like a Facebook for the dead, this thing we were trying to put together. It's a long story anyway. But one of the people I met when was a lady from LA whose one of her claims to fame was she would paint the Oscars. Now, not the actual ones that are presented to the stars, but the ones that line the red carpet. So she was really a nice person. I can't quite remember her name. And she used to tune into you, if you like, from a distance. All right. So she had done a reading for me way back, and it was lovely. It was all sent it out and gave it to me a freebie kind of. It was all printed out and everything. I thought, this lady knows her stuff. But anyway, about a year or two later, I got in touch with her, and I think I was hinting for another reading at the time, but she wanted to charge, and I was just being Charlie at the time. So I wasn't going to cough up a few dollars for it. Anyway, I just said, listen, what story have you been watching over me recently? Now, this, folks, is... I will swear on a stack of Bibles. So she said to me, Mark, that lovely kind of hippie dream girl way. She said, Mark, I haven't quite tuned into your energy recently, but I did a while back. And I don't know, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And what she related to me was, she said, there is a lyric from a Coldplay song, and it's saying, I don't want to be a cycle of recycled revenge. I am telling you guys, this was back when I used to do ironing. Do you remember ironing? You do your trousers and stuff. I suppose it was because I was wearing suits back then and shirts. So maybe our children who are grown up young ladies now, they might have been only babies at the time. Sometime before I had talked to her, a few weeks, I'd been ironing in my conservatory. Yeah. I'd been ironing my knickknacks, my little bits and pieces, Irene. My small, yeah, my smalls, as they say. Yeah. And I had been listening to La Vida. It's not Ricky Martin. What is it? I'm looking at it here. La Vida, Viva La Vida by Coldplay. Mm-hmm. And another thing I used to do was there's these short stories by Mark Manning, a man with an Irish accent, and I do poetry and stuff. And that lyric came up out of the stereo to me. I don't want to be a cycle of recycled revenge. Now, I never shared that with anyone, but all as I remember saying to myself that day as I ironed merrily away was, God, that's a bloody good lyric. I wish I'd written that. Said it to nobody but me in my head. Now, if that was a coincidence...
So that's when you think she tuned in at that very moment then?
Well, she must have, or I had retained it in my head, because I'm that kind. I will write down stuff if it appeals to me. But I don't think... I just remember listening to the song, because there was no one else around, and saying, God, I wish I'd written that. That sounds really cool. That's, you know when someone says something or writes something and you go, I wish I'd done that. So that was the only other reason. Now there has been a few other things as well, and stories and all, but I won't bore you with them. But that happened, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Hello, Mark.
Yes, that's very few people can really tune in like that, in my experience. I haven't really met hardly anyone that was as good as they claimed, per se. I've met a lot of so-called psychics or mediums.
Am I good?
Oh, you're the best, darling. Am I interrupting something here, guys?
No, that's how we talk to each other.
Irene's okay. She hit something once in Blue Moon, but
Cheeky bugger.
we work.
Oh, sorry, I dropped my thing out me.
And do you sit there with charts or blank paper or any of that? The man who stared at goat stuff, no?
I can do that, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can do it that way.
Amazing.
No, so I tell you the ones that I really, really like is, and I'm not asleep when this happens. You know when you're sleeping and you know when you're not sleeping. You go to bed, you're in that between that time of falling asleep, but you're not asleep. You're kind of in that
alpha
weird
theta. It's called alpha theta. Yeah.
Then when I get things, then I always manage or try to remember to let Mark know the following day so that he can write it all down.
Yeah, because she'll forget it.
I hope she's paying
That's
you,
some
Mark.
Powerful stuff doing that, don't I, Mark?
I still have a lot of it saved.
Terrorist stuff.
Well, there was that. There was the Malaysian flight.
Yeah.
That airplane.
Yeah, I know exactly where that is. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you mapped it out.
It is? Do you know where the plane is? No.
Yeah, I know exactly where it is.
Yeah. Well, she picked it up, 3 days after? No. Okay. Never mind.
Not over the air.
Not over the air. Okay.
No, otherwise I'm going to have people pestering me tomorrow. When is it? When is it? Are you done with it? Yeah.
Well, it's underwater. There you go.
Say it's underwater, all right. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Go. But it's true. The only thing I would say is I told Mark exactly where it was long before and I told him what route it took. Now I'm going to get arrested tomorrow. Long before it was broadcast out what route was taken. I said where it changed direction and everything long before that ever came out. And I drew you pictures.
The transponder was turned off, was it? The transponder was turned off, I think. So you did well.
But
so we worked a few
days before.
Yeah.
My freaking door tomorrow.
Well, don't tell anybody where you live. Anyway, no, we've worked several paranormal cases together and tuned in. In fact, there was this one in Wales, and I'll tell this one, Irene, because this girl had contacted us, convinced that there was some evil witch-like being in her house. And long story short, we realized that she was the one creating it with her own energy. She was spiking. Her energy was spiking and creating something like we call a tulpa, which was
she a teenager or what age roughly?
No, she was a young woman in her 20s. But she had people put things in her head that would scare her. And then that's what would start manifesting. I mean, even her boyfriend saw this stuff at the time. But yet something never felt right about the case. And then when she said, well, some psychic told her, well, witches used to practice, devil worshiping in the basement. Well, it turned out the house never had a basement. But yet she convinced herself that there was a witch in the house, and she'd see an old hag at the top of the stairs. And we realized that through not only our regular research, but Irene doing her thing, we were able to actually disprove it and explain to her what was happening. Oh my God, this woman got so mad at us because we did not tell her what she wanted to hear.
Yeah.
We got like a really nasty earful from her, didn't we?
Yeah. Didn't care
It's
though,
like-
did we? Fact is,
Not really,
She was all it, she wasn't. There was no witch.
There
It's all
was
in
there was nothing
imagination.
there was nothing there. It was her creating it out of her own
Mhm.
fears.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting case.
And
But,
there's
you
an old Irish saying, and you could say it to her, even if she did get her knickers in a twist. You could say, "I'm sorry, but the truth is shamed, but never blamed."
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll have to write that
Truth
one
is
down.
shamed, but never blamed, Mrs. I'm sorry, our findings are not in accordance with what's in your head, but them's the breaks.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, Mark, Charlie, with doing your new podcast, Scary Eire, I mean, you're going to be talking a lot about different things around Ireland. Is there a particular topic that interests you the most? I know you had your one ghostly experience, but not much else. But is there something that really intrigues you?
Yeah, sorry you asked, but I'll keep it short and in a couple of bulletin points, right? Really quick stuff so to look forward to on the second episode of Scary Eire. Buckle up, Buttercup. So we have a ghost in a radio station that happened about 20 years ago, and a newsreader who's been on the air amount of years, and she's a lovely person, Bernie Jamison. She's going to talk about that. The Banshee is something I can talk about.
I am glad that you're going to talk about the Banshee.
Yeah, the Banshee. My mother experienced that, and she was taken from her family when she was young because of the TB tuberculosis epidemic, and she ended up like literally putting pennies on dead people's eyes and helping lay out the dead when she was only about 12. But anyway, a Banshee came in via one of the patients, so I can relate that. The castles as well, Kinnity Castle, which I think featured on Most Haunted. I personally did business when I was in television with the manager of that, and he swore
Is that
blind.
is that the one with the thing up on the balcony?
Oh, I think that's Leap Castle.
Yeah,
Lep Castle.
Elemental. The Elemental. And then, guys, as well as that, we have the Hellfire Club, which is notorious. There's also a Hellfire Club, as you know, in the UK.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
I
is,
was up there. I was up there after midnight about 2 years ago, and I have a recording of that. I can't say I saw anything, but it's amazing, whether you believe or not, when you do go to historic places at night.
Yeah.
Of course, your sensitivities are going to be on alert. But what is incontrovertible is the fact that you are within historic environs. It doesn't matter if you see anything or you don't. You're kind of in there where something happened. And by the way, I don't know how people feel about spirit boxes and that kind of carry on. The ones that say John and then says Hall, and then it might say.
I really don't go for them.
Can I tell you a little very quickly behind those? I mean, as a voiceover guy, every so often I get sent scripts, right? And in this particular case, they're called prompts. And what they are is a jumble of disparate words, right, with absolutely no relationship whatsoever. So I get paid just to read out paranormal, door, ghost, John, Egbert, baby, and obviously somebody jumbles them into an electronic device, sells it to people who know better, and they all jump and build their whole investigation around the fact that this thing has spoken a few words to them, which Mark Manning probably said 5 or 6 months beforehand in his studio. I'm as skeptical as anybody else. I'm not into the Most Haunted when they're screaming and roaring and jumping around the place. That carry on.
Or the Ghost Adventures guys, like, oh, dude, oh my God. Yeah, same thing.
Oh, yeah, it's Scooby-Doo with the eyes moving in the painting on the wall.
Well, we did an investigation, about a month and a half ago? I did one here locally for the first time. It's been a few years since I've been out. I'm trying to get back into it. And I had one of those investigators who was on TV with one of their own TV shows, and that's exactly what they were doing, using these spirit boxes things to,
Crazy.
with the voices. And I'm kind of rolling my eyes, thinking this isn't a real investigation. But I had my equipment going, and we bloody caught stuff. I
Yes.
mean, we caught EVPs. There was one that it seemed to say Irene's name. Even, she wasn't there, but because she was looking into it, it said her name. That and Renee, I think it said. Irene, do you remember?
Irene.
Yeah.
That's another name for me, is Irene.
Yeah.
Irene.
And we caught a partial apparition at the top of a stairway.
Mhm.
So that's fascinating. But see, when I go into an investigation, I try not to use any of those new gadgets or tools, whatever, old school. Plus, going off of, and Irene taught me this, going off of, what your body is telling you too. What are you picking up on? I'm trying to improve my own senses. And there is definitely some heavy energy there, especially in the basement.
Absolutely. The body, and indeed the biggest organ, it sounds of it, in the body, of course, is like the skin. Your skin is so sensitive. It's got sensors all over it, Well,
that's why when their hair stands up on end, they get goosebumps, chills, an electrical feeling. I get a tingling on my scalp when I feel something's nearby, or a slight headache.
Get tingling on your scalp if I'm doing a remote view on you.
Oh yeah, you're looking into me and you're trying to mess with me.
Yeah, I know.
But we it's again, I'm more old school, but old school and not old school. What's that?
That's the best way. That's the best way to be old school. All these gadgets they come up with nowadays, you don't know what they're. Well, it's like Charlie was just saying about the ghost box,
Especially anything you can download on your phone.
Yeah.
These phone apps. No.
Yeah. This is it. My grandchildren, they were going around with their telephones because they had a ghosty thing on there, and they were going around to all the rooms in the house. And I tell you what, instead of having 4 ghosts, I suddenly got about 300 that night. There was one in every bloody corner, sitting on the sofa or sitting in the office here. It was everywhere. There was all these ghosts.
I think as well, without all that gadgetry, I don't know how you feel about, I'm not sure if it's a phenomenon, but certainly the whole area of pathetic fallacy, if you've ever heard of that. I think it's first mentioned in Shakespeare. And I was giving an example. I don't know if I did it on that show recently, or I have other things as well that I broadcast. But say, for instance, not too long ago, in fact, just about 6 weeks ago, guys, I had a very good neighbour of mine, a fine man, but he was on his own, and he took his own life. He had got to a certain, he'd hurt himself. His back had been killing him, and his neck. But I also think he lived on his own, and his children had all grown up, and it's a fine man as well, fine man, but he took his own life. And we were passing by. He was a stalwart as well of this little terraces we live in, There's myself, my wife, another couple, and him. We were kind of there for the long haul, But yeah, he took his own life recently. I was so sad to see him being taken, a stretcher with a blanket on it. Oh God. And I went to the viewing and I shouldn't have, because it just didn't look like him. But
it never does, trust me.
No, well, sometimes it does, but I nearly, I won't say gagged. My wife said to me, "Are you all right?" And I said, "No," and kind of just lurched towards the door. It just looked like someone had Frankensteined him, basically. It looked, anyway. The thing was, a few weeks later, we're going by his door, and he's ivy outside, like an ivy bush type thing. And this was only recently, and it's still there, right? So there's a rose or a white flower. I can't be precise. I'm not David Bellamy, right? But it was a white flower on top of the ivy. So I said to my wife, isn't that lovely? Somebody in mourning must have just left that as in honor of him, you know? And she said, yeah. And we went off to the shops. And on the way back, I just thought, I don't know what possessed me, but I said, I'll just touch it and see if it lifts up. It was organic. It had grown out. Just one still there, single white flower. That happened. The other thing was I had an uncle who was what was called a Christian brother, right? And I used to think that was a contradiction in terms because a lot of kids suffered at their hands. But I had an uncle who was one of the good guys. He died in his 80s. And I remember I came home after a radio show, got what's known as the Dart. It's like a tram system here in Dublin. Came into the house. There was nobody else in the house. And I got a waft of roses just at the bottom of my bed. Can't explain that. So, you know, I don't know. Even when that man, you know, had died and it was lashing rain, you know. And the final thing I'd just say in relation to this pathetic fallacy is Steve, I mentioned earlier, his mum was like a mother to me. And she passed a few years ago, and she loved butterflies. And as I did her eulogy, a single butterfly fluttered around her coffin, landed on her coffin. I saw this with my own eyes. And people who knew her were kind of all exchanging glances because this was Nora's thing. It was butterflies. So I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, I think that is as convincing to me as any spirit box. Is where I'm coming from, guys.
Yeah.
You
Sorry, Mark.
Go ahead.
In Scotland, butterflies are often seen at funerals and everything. My Uncle Willie, there was a butterfly. Oh, falling out my ear. There was a butterfly flying around when they were doing his service, right? And my mother's, there was one in the chapel where there. Several I've been to, there's been butterflies, and in the middle of winter too.
Yes.
You know?
And you see the bumblebees now as well, bumblebees in winter.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, we were talking earlier about, you know, going to these historic places. And when I got to go over last year, and Irene and her husband took me all over Wales and a little bit into, on the English side, to Stonehenge and up to Bath. But we went to these old abbeys and castles. What was that castle we were at? That one great one that day where Kidwelly Castle, yes. And you know, we were just there walking around, you know, trying to feel it. But at one point, I'm filming with my phone, and Irene stepped up on a little rock to look in this turret that couldn't be accessed by the public, and it was one of those slit windows that you see in these turrets that the archers used to shoot out of. And she looked in there, and then she turned and looked at me, and she never said a word, but I could tell by the look on her face. And I go, something there? And she just points at it and steps down. So I step up and I look in. I don't really see much, but I'm filming with my camera. And it wasn't until later, looking at the footage, I caught a shadow moving the entire length along the wall, about 10, 12 feet up in the air from the ground. And it stopped halfway through. And while it was there, you could kind of see the head moving like it was checking me out. And then it continued to move along the wall until it vanished. So that was pretty wild.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can. I have two studio cameras here, and one is quite an expensive thing. It's called an Avermedia, but it gives a big wide angle. But anyway, there's a freaking software glitch on it. So when I'm making a video here in the studio, I have to use the little thing that comes with the PC, you know, the little webcam. And that picks up, like, it sees dust that the other one, which is infinitely more technologically advanced, doesn't pick up. And I'm not even sure it's dust. It's kind of orby in effect. So I'd well believe it, Mark. I mean, cameras, and especially audio as well, The microphone here, this is a professional, it's called a Neumann TLM 103, boys with their toys, I know, but it's very, very sensitive. And because there's a spectrum of sound just the same as there is with light. And the odd time when I'm editing here, the very odd time, but you will pick up, I can't explain it, but disembodied. I can't even say EVP. It's too faint. It could be radio stations or something. So it's groovy. There's an old 60s word for you guys. It's groovy, huh? But
as we used to say in California, it's bitchin', dude.
It's bitchin', dude, when that happens. Yeah, because the evidence is there, you know, with your own ears or eyes. So what more could you ask for?
Well, we've had I think about 3 or 4 shows in the whole time that we've been doing that, where we've had some strange things come through, voices and whatnot that we all heard, and we go, who was that? And nobody would cop to it. And it was very interesting. It was like, okay, sometimes you couldn't make it out, but there would be something there that was definitely not any of us.
MI6.
What's that?
MI6.
MI6, yes, they were listening in on us.
Yeah.
Checking to see if you're being naughty.
Yeah.
Well, we're
I've been moving around here. Sorry, I keep forgetting to mute them. Blooming microphone. It's been so long since we've done a show. I've been moving around on the chair, eating grapes. God knows what else. So I bet you've heard all this background noise, haven't you?
Actually, no. It's
no, I haven't heard the pips or anything in the grapes. It's been amazing.
No, these microphones that she and I are using mute out everything but your voice.
Oh, I like it. Yes, yeah, that's good.
So, well, we have come to the end of the show. So again, our guest has been Mark Manning, who we're also calling Charlie because of me, Mark. And his new show. Okay, I'm going to butcher it.
I tell you, I've been calling him Charlie forever from now. Every time I've been calling him. Is Charlie on tonight?
Yeah, Charlie is good.
Charlie's show good. Going out tonight.
I'll save it, Mark. I'll save it. I'll make it easy for you. Okay. So the show is called Scary Eire, and Eire is the Irish word for Ireland. And if you've got any paranormal stories with, say, an Irish slant to them at all that you might have heard on your cradle or your friends or whatever. And by the way, it's not exclusively so. If you've got a good paranormal story for us, you can email paranormalireland@protonmail.com and we can read it out, or we can even record you and put you on the air. That's how it works. So thanks very much, Irene and Mark. I really do appreciate you giving me the opportunity and also being on your show. It's been fab.
And Mark, it's absolutely been a pleasure talking with you too.
Mm-hmm. I got an awful of grapes again.
It's a love-in. It's a paranormal love-in, guys.
There we go. Well, thank you, Mark. And thank you, everybody else, for tuning in to this latest edition of the Paranormal UK radio show, the flagship show on the Paranormal UK radio network. See, even I screw it up after the long break we've had. But you know what? Where can people still find us, Irene?
Everywhere, people. Just about everywhere.
Well, everyone, you all take care. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll try to have some more new shows here soon. And in the meantime, be good humans. We'll talk with you soon.
Don't forget to tune in on I've forgotten the name of it now. Realm of whatever. What is it, Mark? What's our other show called?
The Ether.
Oh, our other show, The Reality Realm.
Yeah, The Reality Realm.
Yes. Okay. That's a slightly different format show.
Yeah, well, that's just, yes, it is a different format. You see, the Paranormal UK radio show, that's when we have a guest, and when it's Reality Realm or whatever it is, reality. That's
Reality Realm is you and I and fighting, talking about very interesting topics. So
yeah.
So anyway, yes, we have the Reality Realm as well. Anyway, again, everyone, thanks again. Be good humans, and we will talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.